Hello, everybody. My name is Pablo Boczkowski. I'm a faculty member at Northwestern University and the director of the Center for Latinx Digital Media. Thank you so much for joining us for today's weekly virtual seminar of the Center. It is really a pleasure to have you with us. The mission of the Center is to create knowledge about digital media in Latinx and Latin American communities across the Americas. Today's speaker is a leading scholar in this space. Arturo Arriagada is an associate professor at Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez in Santiago de Chile. Celeste Wagner, a doctoral candidate at the University of Pennsylvania and an affiliate at the Center for Latinx Digital Media, will introduce Arturo in just a minute. I am delighted to note that this quarter our series is co-sponsored by the Alice Kaplan Institute for the Humanities, the Buffett Institute for Global Affairs, the Center for Global Culture and Communication, the Department of Radio, Television and Film, the Latina and Latino Studies Program, and the Program in Latin American and Caribbean Studies. But before we go to the seminar, I would like to start by acknowledging that Northwestern is a community of learners situated within a network of historical and contemporary relationships with Native American tribes, communities, parents, students, and alumni. It is also in close proximity to an urban Native American community in Chicago and near several tribes in the Midwest. The Northwestern campus sits on the traditional homelands of the people of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Ottawa, as well as the Menominee, Miami, and Ho-Chunk nations. It was also a site of trade, travel, gathering, and healing for more than a dozen other native tribes, and is still home to over 100,000 tribal members in the state of Illinois. It is within Northwestern's responsibility as an academic institution to disseminate knowledge about Native peoples and the institution's history with them. Consistent with the university's commitment to diversity and inclusion, Northwestern works towards building relationships with Native American communities through academic pursuits, partnerships, historical recognitions, community service, and enrollment efforts. Let me say briefly about how the seminar will unfold. First, Celeste will tell us more about Arturo's research and career in just a minute. Then Arturo will deliver his seminar. After that, we will open for questions. Please enter your questions in the Q&A function of the webinar. Celeste will moderate. At the end, we will deliver some closing remarks. Once again, many thanks for joining us, and without further ado, Celeste, the screen is all yours.
Thank you so much, Pablo, for the introduction, Mora, for organizing this event and for all your work. It is my pleasure to introduce Professor Arturo Arriagada today at the seminar. Dr. Arriagada is an associate professor at the School of Communications and Journalism at the Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez in Chile. He received his PhD in sociology by the London School of Economics and Political Science, where he also earned a master's in media and communications. He holds undergraduate degrees in both communications and sociology. Professor Arriagada researches and teaches in the areas of political communication in Latin America in particular, and also issues of digital labor, platform and creator economies, as well as on issues of algorithms and quantification processes. Dr. Arriagada is a very active and collaborative researcher. He's the director of Cultura Social Media, a research lab based at the university where he works, Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez, that explores how digital communication impacts social, political, and economic life. He also leads the Chilean branch of the initiative Fair Work, a project that studies the labor conditions of gig workers, which is based at the Oxford Internet Institute. He also recently has been awarded with a prestigious national grant in Chile to study the evolution of work from an interdisciplinary perspective and with colleagues in different institutions. Among other venues, his work has been published in some of the best journals in the discipline, such as the Journal of Communication, Communication Culture and Critique, Social Media and Society, and others. He's also the co-author of 4 books. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Professor Arturo Arriagada to the screen.
Thank you very much, Celeste. I will share my screen here. So, well, before starting my presentation, I would like to thank Pablo, Celeste, Mora, and the rest of the team for inviting me to this seminar. I am very happy to share my research with you all. The first issue I would like to address is how I started doing research on the creator economy and the work of influencers. Briefly, in 2011, during my PhD at the London School of Economics, I was very interested in studying a group of music bloggers based in Santiago, Chile, that were key agents in the existence and the making of the indie music scene. In 2012, when I arrived to Santiago to meet some of them and starting being part of that community, I was impressed about one thing. All of these content creators, but at that time, as I mentioned, nobody used that word. They were bloggers. These people were in different ways working with advertising agencies or branding agencies promoting products, mostly beers and sneakers, on their websites or blogs to make a living. I remember talking to an executive at a branding agency that said at that time, digital media is the future for all of us, and bloggers are the new taste makers for many consumers. By contrast, bloggers were struggling trying to make a living creating content online for free and for the love of music, even though they were positioned in the scene as key cultural mediators between musicians, audiences, labels, and brands. Since then, I started studying the activities of different types of social media content creators, influencers, YouTubers, and other types of cultural producers like musicians, in order to understand their activities and how technological, cultural, and social changes facilitate or not their activities. In this talk, I will present some of the findings of my research on influencers and content creators in the last 10 years in Chile. In recent years, the term content creator has emerged as something of a catch-all to describe digitally enabled cultural producers who create and circulate content on social media platforms, driven by what communication scholar David Craig describes as an entrepreneurial spirit and desire to generate their own media brands. Bloggers, Instagrammers, YouTubers, TikTokers, amongst other labels, emerge to describe individual or community activities of content creation on social media. However, being a social media content creator involves developing content-based businesses across different social media platforms and in relation to different actors. For instance, advertising agencies, brands, platforms, and audiences. Well, as we can see in this third slide, the size of the influencer market has been increasing in the last years. No? You can see that in 2016, for instance, the market size were around or reaches around almost $2 billion. And in 2022, that amount of money increases towards almost $17 billion. No? In 2018, the prestigious Business of Fashion magazine published a special issue about or titled "The Age of Influence." No, and the director of the magazine described that brands can only hope to influence the conversations that people are having about them, and to do so, they are enlisting a growing army of professional influencers who have become a new staple of digital marketing around the world. In this context of a huge increase in the market size and considering that content creators is recognized as an activity and sometimes a professional activity all over the world in the last 5 or 10 years, why Chile? No, the Chilean content creators as a case study. when I decided to study this group of people in 2011, when I started studying these music bloggers, I was very impressed by the values that were like a source of inspiration for this kind of content creators in relation to not only become visible to others through platforms, but also trying to achieve a position in the social media ecology, to reach a position of recognition by others. One huge change that happened by that time, and in the last, I don't know, 10 to 12 years in the country, is that is the rise of social media as the most important source of information and entertainment for young people. We can see here a comparative graphs of the trends of news and information consumption based on a survey did by colleagues at Diego Portales University. And social media, it's since 2011 started to become one of the most important sources of information for these people. So in the last 10 years, I've been examining content creators' activities through an ethnographic approach. I've been always oriented towards qualitative methods. I love to see people on their everyday practices in front of their computers, sharing content and asking them why they do this, how they started creating content across different platforms, etc. So between 2011 and 2012, I did a 9-month ethnography exploring the activities of this group of music bloggers. That was my point of entrance to this world. And also I did a participant observation at a branding agency, an agency that used to work with bloggers by that time, promoting brands and products across their websites. And also I did analysis of online content, blogs, websites, Facebook posts, Twitter, and Instagram, a platform that was emerging at that time. And then between 2014 and 2018, I started studying specifically the activities of influencers. I did more than 50 interviews with fashion influencers, beauty influencers. I did a 3-month participant observation at an influencer agency, trying to understand the criteria behind decisions or from brands' perspectives, from agents' perspectives that were working with influencers, trying to be involved in campaigns, understand the way they measure the activities of influencers, how they define their the payment of their activities, etc. And also I did an analysis of online content, of Instagram posts and stories. And also I analyzed promotional material, specifically the media kits, the promotional content influencers create to being related with agencies and brands. What the literature and previous studies said about content creators, they were all related to this idea of creators moving between visibility, reaching big audiences based on their practices of content creation, but also the precariousness of their activities. A number of works problematized users' negotiations of hyper commercialized identity online through the examination of self-branding, how they promote themselves as a personal brand. Other scholars analyzed the complex and far-reaching labor influencers undertake as they position content production as both an authentic, genuine passion and a strategic act of entrepreneurship. Brooke Erin Duffy has been a very relevant scholar in relation to study the activities of these content creators from this approach, the tensions between authenticity and entrepreneurship. And other scholars explore the precarity creator experiment depending on platform algorithms and rules to achieve visibility. That's the case of Cotter and Bishop. In 2018, I started developing and analyzing this question related to the way people or content creators specifically deal moving across different spaces, specifically moving across very commercial spaces like Instagram when they promote brands or products, but also moving across this idea of or this ideal of authenticity regarding their communication practices with their followers, trying to being authentic, be natural on their style of communication. So I asked with my colleague Sophie Bishop about this idea, how this branch of cultural producers make sense of themselves and their activities as ordinary and accessible while promoting consumption, how they can deal with those poles of commerciality and authenticity, and we found that, and we arrived to this idea of influencer imaginaries in order to understand how these actors organize their social world in ways that enable them to justify moving between these contradictory poles of commerciality and authenticity. As we try to describe in an article published in the journal Communication, Culture and Critique with Sophie Bishop, we describe it that this navigation necessitates influencer imaginaries. These imaginaries, as we described, help creators to make sense of three different topics. First of all, to resolve information asymmetries in markets, then to differentiate themselves from celebrities and advertisers as average people, and also to negotiate self-definition with regard to other actors they are involved with, or working with, like agencies, like their audiences, and also themselves trying to deal with their identities, as cultural producers and as individuals as well. So I would like to analyze briefly these imaginaries. In relation to the information asymmetries, we found that these actors, these creators, try to resolve information market asymmetries. How they try to do this, for instance, as a beauty influencer Denise describes, giving valued opinions from better knowledge, like semi-experts, helping people with information when buy a product. They think of themselves as a channel between brands and consumer, but they consider they are more closer, as Denise mentioned, because they are just normal people. They are not celebrities. They are not knowledgeable or experts about certain topics. In the same way as Christian, a fashion influencer, describes, he wants to create conversations with people to let them know what they are buying, to know if they are paying a fair price. So this idea of information asymmetries, it's one of the forms through which these actors justify moving between these commercial environments and these authentic spaces, no? Secondly, the idea of being or presenting themselves in front of their audiences as average people, no? It's another strategy and source of justification of their activities, no? As Natalia described, I think it might become dangerous if you exclusively start focusing on metrics, because I think that ultimately what we do is a naturalness that brings likes, not the other way around. They are not looking for likes, as Natalia said, no? Not looking for likes and then making it seem natural. Natalia, it's an influencer instructor. We participated in a short course she gave for people who want to become an influencer, no? So we were part of all the strategies. We were in front of her, like taking notes and participating in the activity, trying to understand the way she defines their activity and the tips and justifications she share with other people to become an influencer, not successful. Another important element or discourse related to this imaginary, influencer imaginary, is the way these people justify their activities in order to move across different commercial networks. This idea of commercial networks tries to describe how these people are part of what sociologist Viviana Selicer define or describe as circuits of value, no? How these people get related to others in order to create economic value and cultural value through different types of activities, resources like media, information, different communicative exchanges, etc. So influencers are part of these commercial networks when they, not only when they create content for the audiences, but also when they start promoting brands and working with branding agencies or advertising agencies, exchanging ideas about the activity, exchanging representations about lifestyles, etc. No? So as Maria, a fashion influencer, describes, a brand might hire you to do a piece, but what I do is like make that bit fun for my followers. That brings the brand closer in the most natural way possible and isn't as aggressive as saying to my audience, hey, buy this. She was describing here how she managed to get related to branding agencies, no? And try to defend her position as a content creator in front of other professionals that from creators' perspective doesn't know how to reach audiences and establish an authentic commercial communication. No? As Romina describes, no, before advertising agencies were in charge of producing a fantasy, now I build that fantasy for them. I have the power. So when we realize that these people justify themselves and also move across these commercial networks based on their imaginaries, we also take a look about a topic that was evident during our fieldwork with the team I work in this project, no, with my colleagues. And it was related to this idea of the evolution of platforms, how these people, as we can see here in the slide, deal with changes in different platforms, algorithms that define your visibility, how you can negotiate with the algorithm to make your content visible, how you can deal with new terms and conditions from platforms, how you can deal with the technical features of platforms. So the second question we were interested to explore was related to this idea, how evolutions in platforms, including constant updates to their affordances, to creators' affordances, shape the activities and interpretive processes of content creators. And we found that creators experience the evolution in platform in different ways. We published this work in the Journal of Social Media and Society. I wrote this article with my colleague Francisco Ibanez. And we found that they describe these experiences in the form of different communicative styles. Creators perceive a temporal acceleration of their activities, and they also have to deal and negotiate permanently all the time with other actors in the social network through which commercial activities are configured. As Andrea described, having a blog was the basis of everything. All my content is there. If you didn't have a blog, you're nobody. Now on Instagram, you can invite people to read your content through images. She was describing how was moving from a blog to Instagram. For Mariana, a fashion influencer, on Instagram, I can share a picture of an outfit because Instagram is a visual platform. However, on my blog, I write about 7 reasons to use that outfit. She have another communicative style according to each platform. The same content, it's on different platforms, shared in different ways through different strategies. The second component of this idea of platform evolution is it's the temporal acceleration these people perceive when they're doing their activities. It's fun, as Javier mentioned. Instagram stories are like the new TV, and they're automatically deleted after 24 hours. Everything starts again after that. That's fun. Also, you get instantaneous feedback from your followers. Ricardo described this idea of the temporal acceleration with this impressive quote. A blog with 1 or 2 posts per week can survive, but on Instagram, uploading 1 or 2 pictures per week, you're dead. You need at least 1 picture daily. So this idea of you have to feed the platform with content all the time to make your content visible. It changes the way people experience their sense of time, on this activity. And then in relation to these circuits of commerce, as I mentioned before, the way they get related with different actors, commercially speaking, if a platform change their terms and conditions, or if the algorithm changes in a platform, sometimes creators can lose all their work, years of work, because their content is not visible for the audience. Then they have to start from zero and negotiating again themselves with branding agencies, with brands, trying to understand also the changes in the platforms in order to reach rapidly, very fast, those changes in the platform, and without losing their audience. As Valentina describes, if you are not uploading content constantly, Instagram's algorithm punishes you. Before that, you upload your picture and you can see it immediately, but now depends on the number of people who likes the picture and my kind of followers. You can upload a picture, and if I don't like it, maybe I will not see your content for a long time. So I describe it like two different topics we found, or phenomena we found with my colleagues, and during our fieldwork with these people in Chile, no? And now I am working with another colleague, Matias Valderrama. He's now at the University of Warwick doing his PhD. We are studying the companies that are measuring influencers' activities. And these companies define the value of influencers' work and make recommendations to brands and other companies to work with them or not, etc., etc. So we are writing an article titled Making Social Media Influence Calculable, Influencer Agencies, Algorithmic Systems, and Platform Metrics. So in that fieldwork, we are interviewing people, trying to understand how they define working with an influencer, how they are, these companies are defining the value of their work, how they are intermediating between different actors, not only influencers, but brands and other companies, and how they are measuring influencers' impact. So thank you, gracias. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for these technical issues during my presentation, but this is a short description of what I've been doing in the last 8 or 10 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arturo, for your presentation and for sharing your very interesting research. So now we're going to open to questions coming from the public. We already have questions coming in, but I would like to start by asking you something I guess that I know that questions about definitions are not always the most interesting ones, but some of these blurred lines that I see happening, and I'm thinking mostly on influencers, and again, not so influencers on Instagram, on how some of the activities that are related to the part of commercialization part of what you're talking about has started to happen also with people who are on social media to sell something else. For instance, you are an illustrator, so that you work by selling your art or whatever you do with your art, but now these people have also started having influencer personalities, or they also start doing their illustrations are also advertisements for different companies that buy their art, but in a way that it comes, it's very organic in social media. And sometimes, because their identity changes, initially they were just illustrators sharing their art in social media, and now they are also doing these ads for different companies. They sometimes do, because they have to shift their identity in these platforms, they do it ironically, or the way that they create these advertisements with their own illustrations, for example, in this example, it's kind of ironic because they are like, oh yeah, now I sell things here. Like, oh yeah, now I am selling you products. I am, so what do you think about this blurred cases in social media that are not necessarily influencers, but that they adopt the same tactics, and how brands are also finding in these people who are on social media for other reasons, how they are also taking advantage of how to insert advertisement in very creative and new ways in these platforms. Sorry, you're muted. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Definitions are crucial, and in this case, the situation you are describing, it's a very good example of how platforms, in different ways, became a central source of, determine in different ways content production. No, an illustrator has to be in that kind of circuit or in that in different platforms in order to commercialize their products, because people's attentions are on Instagram or TikTok, independently if that illustrator can be creative or not. So based on that, the idea of being an influencer or I don't know, a professional illustrator, it's sometimes irrelevant in terms of now they use that tool in order to promote themselves, in order to achieve some kind of recognition in that digital space, and try to transcend in some ways to another spaces, no, or fields. I'm thinking of, I don't know, moving across your own website towards, I don't know, an art gallery, no? Or in the case of influencers, some of them started on their blogs or on their Instagram accounts, and then they are publishing articles in the newspapers or in the national media, giving tips about fashion. No, it's what different authors have defined as the commercialization of the self. No, and I think that's the key issue in this topic. No, I always remember when people ask me why you're studying these people. No, and for me the inner motivation was trying to understand how you start commercializing yourself through different networks, no? And how this promotional culture that is not new take another form and in this digital environment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to read a question from the audience from Nicolette Alayon, or Alayon, I'm sorry if not pronouncing it right, that has to do with how to do this research and how were you able to contact these content creators and have them agree to be interviewed. And maybe you can talk a little bit about their concerns around anonymity or issues about like research ethics in doing these things.
Yeah, thank you for that question. There were lots of issues that are part of the topic itself. I always contact them as a researcher, as a guy who was interested in what they were doing at that time, being very clear about the use of information through interviews and observation, taking care of their anonymity and not sharing, in the case of the quotes, for instance, the real names, etc. But also, I realized then that it was part of the topic being a subject of study. No, for them it was attractive being analyzed by a sociologist who were interested in their activities, because that in some ways not validate their work, but they can promote themselves in a way that they are doing something important or something new to different actors, no? Especially to brands. And I think it was an opportunity to for them to show their work as more serious in some ways. And also there were issues about gender issues. No, I was a male studying mostly female activities, and I realized that I had to negotiate my position, no, in terms of, well, there were some things I will not be capable to explore. For instance, I don't know, being part of a only female activity without distorting the way the type of conversation they were having, for instance. So in those cases, I decided not to participate in, for instance, private marketing events for women in order to promote beauty products. So I always try to participate in private events, but not only oriented towards women. No, so yeah, that was some of the strategies during my fieldwork.
That is great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So now we have another question from Mariana, and these are kind of two questions. So I will go with the first one. What is your opinion about the axis of authenticity and commercialization when it comes to politics and elections? And then the second question is, do you believe that this influencer culture will at some point be regulated?
Okay. Well, the first question is super interesting in terms of politics is a field where it's not, I mean, the influencer concept is works in a strange way. And I remember having that conversation with Samuel Woolley, who's a researcher from Austin, Texas University. He was studying influencers in the US. And the idea of being a political influencer, I mean, I don't know, a columnist can be a political influencer, and he's influencing people towards political ideas or orienting them in relation to political ideas with being paid by a newspaper, for instance. But there are some people that can be paid to promote partisan ideas and being paid by political parties. And then there's the question in relation to regulation, no? How you can regulate this activity, not only in relation to the commercialization of your own life, but also in relation to the spread of political ideas, values, and trying to influence the discussion in the public sphere. I remember my colleague Luis Santana at Diego Portales at Adolfo Ibáñez University wrote an article about political bots in politics, no, during political campaigns, and he found that there were no bots were humans. I mean, they were human bots. People that organized themselves online and promote ideas, and during political debates, they're trying to influence the conversation, sharing information, etc. So, yeah, there's a lot of a big space to regulate that kind of activity, but also it's part of freedom of speech in some ways, and people's freedom. Some people are trying to blame platforms or trying to make platforms responsible of that, working with content moderators, etc. Other peoples are trying to regulate those activities through different institutions like consumers associations or I don't know. In my case, the only thing I see about that, not in relation to politics, was in relation to the way you deal publicly and make transparent that you are promoting brands and products with the help or not of the platform. And that was a complex agreement different actors have to achieve in terms of, okay, we have to be clear that we are promoting brands and products. Some influencers were interested in doing that always, some not, and mostly agencies were not very interested, some of them, for being more transparent about that. But they're still pending that kind of regulation, at least in Chile. I know in other countries there are more, not regulation, but some kind of orientations, guidance, or some kind of rules for creators.
Thank you for that. It makes me think that so many of the things that are said that had negative impacts on society, that influencers might promote things that is not responsible, that they are not experts. I believe that has happened, that has always happened with all media forms. It's not unique to platforms, but that's just to say a comment. But now I would like to invite Mora, that I know that she has a question. Maybe Mora, you would like to say your question out loud.
Yes, thank you, Celeste. Thank you so much, Arturo, for this wonderful and so interesting presentation. I have two questions. Please feel free to answer whatever is more relevant. The first question is that you started your presentation, and I know this is frequent in literature about influencers, talking about a contradiction between different dimensions, right? Authenticity, commercialization, etc. My first question, is that contradiction something that emerges from influencers themselves? That is, do influencers perceive that there is some degree of contradiction in their everyday activities? Or is the idea of a contradiction something that emerges from the position of the observers? That is, in this case, you or the literature or academics, right? I mean, do they perceive contradictions, or maybe they don't perceive contradictions? So, because you were saying this is how they justify themselves, and the social imaginaries serve the purpose of justifying, but do they feel like they need to justify themselves, or is that something that emerges from the academic community? And second, it's not related to the first one, but still, I'm super interested about knowing your insights on how influencers deal with the constant demand of responses and of connectivity that I imagine that they need to have in order to function. And this is related to what you were saying about the temporality and the acceleration of the different platforms. So I'm wondering whether you have any insights on that. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you for your questions, Mora. Yeah, in relation to this idea of the contradiction, it's weird because none of them define themselves as an influencer. I mean, that's a category imposed by advertising agencies, by people from the marketing industry. They define themselves as content creators, bloggers, but not influencers. And in that context, the contradiction emerged in relation to the how can I put this, the grades of, or the levels of commercial relations they have. So when they have to I mean, the less involved you are with branding agencies, marketing agencies, brands, etc., the easier it's easy for them to not identify those contradictions. But the more commercial you get, you start dealing with that and start justifying yourself in terms of, okay, I will promote this product because it fits with my values and lifestyle. And if those products are tested in animals, I don't want to promote those products, or I will charge you as a brand for the type of content I will create, not the one that the agency want to impose on me. No, like you have to promote in this way this brand. So yeah, some of them are realizing those contradictions, but the more they are, the closer they are with brands and agencies, it's more evident they had the strategies they and how the imaginary emerge in order to justify their activities. And in relation to the second question, I think how can I put this? You asked me about the idea of.
Yeah, so I feel like they must have like so many demands for being there.
Yeah, the time acceleration. Yeah.
Time, and so I wonder how they deal with that.
Yeah, well, through different strategies. Some of them realize that they can't always answering all the time followers' questions and messages, etc. Paying the cost of not being the more closer to them, no, the friendly influencer. But also that depends on the stage of your career. No, some of them has 50,000 followers. Some of them have 2,000 followers. So the level of the amount of work they have, it's different in that way. But the idea of time acceleration is related with this sense of demand or feel demand by the platform. No? You have to create content daily. You have to post twice a day or 3 times per week, compared to the one post you upload on your blog once a week. No, so it's more demanding, and you have to deal with more work all the time. So in less time as well, because you spend all the time on the platform. So it's related to that.
Gracias.
Thank you so much, Arturo, for responding to those great questions. And now Facundo has also some questions to share.
Thank you, Celeste. Thank you, Arturo, for this fantastic presentation. I've been following platform workers' discussions, particularly since the pandemic started, that in some way shifted or accelerated many of these trends you mentioned. I've been particularly following issues of sex worker in OnlyFans. And I was wondering, how do you see this intersection of culture, economic rewards, and the body? Because particularly in these platforms, what is being offered is not a product or like an object or a service. Well, it's a service, but in this case, the service is the body of the influencer, of the content creator. So I don't know if in any of the interviews you have been like interviewing or seeing particularly within OnlyFans and how this behaves in this platform. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Well, I've been trying to collect some data from OnlyFans content creators. I've been working with a research assistant, Anna. She's been helping me contacting people and trying to reach. And it's been difficult because there are lots of movement across platforms. No, they are not all the time working for OnlyFans. but the thing you asked me is the same thing I can say about that that type of content creation. No, it's like one step further in terms of it's pure commercialization of your body, no, which is obviously completely valid, but it moves the frontier, no, towards new phenomena. I am not sure, honestly. I mean, it's for some people, and we've been doing like 3 to 4 interviews, no more than that, and reading that material, it's only for economic resources. I mean, the main motivation is because it's easy money, no? In the same way can be for a gig worker working for a delivery app, no? It's easy to get money in a context where money is a scarce resource, no, for lots of people, especially during this pandemic, no. So at this stage, that's my only, which is it's very, I don't know, it's difficult to process in terms of, wow, you're dealing with economic difficulties and you have to work on this to make more money because the market is not paying you for other type of activities, no. But that's the small picture I have at this stage.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Arturo, for a spectacular seminar. This is seminar number 50 for us, and we are thrilled to have had you to wrap up our first 50 seminars. I want to thank Facundo for great moderation, and I want to thank the audience for staying with us through the end. I hope everybody has a great rest of your days, and we'll be back with the seminars of the Center for Latinx Digital Media in a couple of weeks. We'll be posting our schedule for the spring quarter soon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Arturo.
Thank you. Bye-bye.